Thank you. Today is Thursday, January 18th, 2024. It is 3 p.m. We are at the Council Chambers of Greater Madawaska. I would like to call the meeting to order. Please read the motion.
Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Greater Madawaska calls to order the January 18th, 2024 regular council meeting at 3 p.m.
You have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second, Councillor Levesque. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. I would ask you to stand for O Canada, please.
Sorry, Sean, we have no sound in chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. Please be seated. As we gather in chambers, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for the rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Thank you. Miigwech. Two point one, approval of agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or excuse from this agenda today?
Yes, there'll be a deletion for item number 11.1, subsection 2, labor relations or employer negotiations, A, fire chief recruitment.
Thank you. And that is within the closed agenda? Thank you. We have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Tripp, second by Councillor Popke. Can you read the resolution as amended then?
That the agenda of the council meeting of January 18th, 2024 be approved as amended with the deletion of item 11.20, subsection 2, labor relations or employee negotiations, A, fire chief recruitment.
Thank you. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. 3.1, approval of minutes. Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the following minutes are approved by council: December 7th, 2023 regular council and December 20th, 2023 special council.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second, Councillor Levesque. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? There are none seen. Thank you. Section 5, delegations. 5.1. Andrew and Jennifer Houston, winter maintenance on McHugh Road. If you'd like to take to the podium, please. And if you could just turn your microphones on to green, just push the button once and it should go to green for you. And then just introduce yourselves. Thank you.
I'm Jennifer Houston. Thanks for having us.
I'm Andrew Houston. Same. Thanks for having us here.
Ready?
Yep, we're ready for you.
Okay, great. So there should be a presentation. Maybe you have it on your screen. You can see it. I'm not sure. Okay. What we're here today to talk about really is the winter maintenance for McHugh Road, as you all know. And on the first slide, can you see the slide yet?
Yeah, it's behind you. Yep.
Oh, yay. Okay, great. Oh, thanks, Robin. That's great. So what you're looking at right there is a barn that we've converted into a four-season home. And before we kind of jump into the meat of the discussion today, I wanted to go to the next slide, please, Robin, and talk a little, introduce you to our family. So we're the Houstons, a family of four. You'll see in these pictures here, we like to spend time outside and hunting and, you know, going to Kippen Creek and whatnot. You'll see there in the top left that there's Andrew. That's when we renovated the barn, and that was the basement part that was stalls before then. Sort of middle at the bottom is the loft area, which had about 9 inches of pigeon poop in it. And you'll see right above that is the part of the construction where we've got spray foam there. You'll see it's started to be framed in for the loft. And back in that lower part is bedrooms and a bathroom and a kitchen and whatnot, okay? So just a little introduction on who we are and kind of give you a visual of what we're going to be talking about today. Next slide, please. So I'm not sure if you've had a chance to go back and take a look at what happened in 2018, but there were some concerns of a similar nature back in 2018. And with the township, and there were concerns about residential development and the cost to upgrade the road as a result of that. And at that time, there were some consultations before the decision was taken, okay? Unlike this time, and a petition was brought to the township, and the township decided to continue the winter road maintenance on McHugh Road, okay? In this slide, you'll see that there are a couple of excerpts from some letters back at that time, and basically, you know, what it kind of says is that they were concerned that if they didn't change the road to seasonal, that residential development would occur, and then there would be an obligation, no option, it says here, except to do year-round maintenance for the foreseeable future, right? So that's just a bit of history there. You'll also see that back at that time, 2018, the winter maintenance in that particular letter was estimated at $2,500 for the winter season for McHugh Road, okay? Since that time, back in December, there was a report brought forward. I think Steve brought that report forward, and it talked about $62,000 for winter maintenance for McHugh Road between 2018 and 2022, okay? So I'm an accountant, I see that number and I go, wow, that's a big difference. I wonder what's happened, right? 2,500 to 62,000, even over 4 years, that's $15,000 over 4 years. So it does make me wonder and want to ask more questions. So wanted to just familiarize you with that in case you hadn't had a chance to go back and take a look at 2018. Next slide, please. Okay, perfect. So, so what's happened over the past 4 years with us is that we bought 200 acres on McHugh Road. What drew us to that property specifically was the fact that it had year-round maintenance. We talked to some local people there, and it had been maintained back to the 1980s. And so we thought, perfect, right? Great. We want to do some work from there. It's got internet. Let's do it. So clearly there was a precedent set there for winter maintenance. And of course, then we went forward and we got permits to convert the garage, convert the barn, build a garage, and that type of thing. What you're going to see here on this particular slide that is as a result of those permits and the building, the classification was changed from farm to residential, and the taxes were changed by more than 11 times in that time period. So from $232 to over $2,600 a year. And you know, I realize that taxes are split between different categories, like some of our property tax goes to the township, some of it goes to education or whatnot, but I think here the point is really that overall our taxes increased substantially as a result of becoming residential. Next slide, please. So what we're looking at here, kind of these pictures at the bottom of this slide, is the heartbeat of our home and our garage, okay? We're completely off grid on McHugh Road. We're about 3.5 kilometers off of Lower Spruce. And the only way we get power is through solar and a propane generator, okay? So as you can see here by the list of things on this slide, the barn was built to be a 4-season residence, right? It's got radiant heating, it's got hardwired Smoke detectors, we have a washer, dryer, water softener, like it's a home, okay? And the garage also has radiant heating in floor. So the point here really is that we need power year round to run this place. When we leave, we have to leave the power on. We can't just shut it down like a hunt camp, okay? And it also can't be heated like a hunt camp. And what I mean by that is that, you know, with a hunt camp, it's fairly small and the rooms are contained and you can heat it usually with a fireplace or something and you can use it, right? But our place is too big for that. It's over 3 floors. It's about 2,400 square feet. And so using just a fireplace is not an option for us. Of course, that's why we put radiant heating on all 3 floors. And I also wanted to point out here that the drawings that accompanied the permits that we got approved when we did this building, okay, showed things like insulation. It showed things like the mechanical rooms and where all those things would go, like the boiler and whatnot, the well, the septic system and things like that. And that the drawings clearly showed that we were building a four-season dwelling. Next slide, please. So we bought this property in February of 2020, actually, and ever since then we've been using it basically every weekend, every other weekend. Sometimes we're there for weeks at a time. We have internet, so we go and work there. We're working there from this week. And what this slide shows in particular here is that that's the usage, that's us, how many times we've been to the barn. In 2023, we used our security cameras footage to gather this information. We made sure we didn't include rabbits and deers and things like that that triggered our cameras as well. And in 2023, the average was 8 days a month, okay? And what you'll notice here too is 5 of the 6 months where there would be no winter maintenance, that's when we actually were above 8 days a month, okay? So just wanted to point that out as well. Next slide, please. So we've spent about $500,000 on this property so far to get it to the state that it is at today. It's a substantial investment for us. And then add on to that, this part here, which is where it gets kind of pretty serious for us, is that we called our insurance company and said, hey, the township is thinking about this. We might not have access. What do you think, right? And I'm quoting here from them. You can read it, but I will paraphrase to say that without access, we risk losing coverage. So that can result in hundreds of thousands of dollars if we can't get fire department out there or whatnot, right? Or anything like that. So, and they say here, you know, we highly recommend that you try to find an alternative way to get access. So, you know, if you put yourself in our shoes, you can imagine how devastating this would be, that we've put hundreds of thousands of dollars into this place and we could lose it and not even be covered by insurance, right? It's a little alarming. Next slide, please. So I wanted to, before we close off, just kind of talk a little bit about the community here a little bit, okay? There was a lot of concerns raised in 2018 from the community. You'll see some of them here. If you go back to 2018, you'll see a letter from Paul Savini that names those things as well. And most of those concerns still exist. I would say that all of those concerns still exist. We know that even now today with this particular issue that you guys have received some letters from other property owners as well. I don't know the details of that, but I do know some have been sent in. So it's still a concern, right, for us and the other property owners. And really, and I do want to be transparent here and say that there was a petition in 2018, like I mentioned. We have started another one. Right now, we have about 60 signatures. Of course, the goal here is to get as many property owners to sign it as possible. And the goal for me is to have it submitted to you guys, original copy, of course, a week from tomorrow. The timelines are pretty tight for this, so we're doing our best to try to go around and find all these people and get them to sign. So I hope that's okay with you. Somebody let me know if that's not, and I'll try to adjust my timing. Last slide, please, Robin. So like we said before, it's a pretty serious issue for us. And we realize that the township has its own concerns, right? And mostly financial, I'm sure, right? I can completely appreciate that. And so we'd like to work out something and discuss something where, you know, we can keep our year-round access, we can maintain those essential services, we can insure our property and make sure that it's protected. We can maintain our investment as well, right? Like, obviously it's gone up in value. And something else to consider here is that because we can't go out and heat this place like a hunt camp, even if we could get access to it by Skidoo or something in the wintertime, it, for me, has even less value than a hunt camp because we can't use it in the wintertime. The wood stove just can't heat this big place, right? So we would lose total access, which would be devastating. And the last thing we'd like to be able to do is to maintain our touch with the community. We've made tons of friends out there, and people come out and see us all the time, and we go see people. We'd like to be able to maintain that as well. So can we do that in a way that makes financial sense for the township as well? And I know there's other concerns too, right? Maybe we compromise on the length of road to be plowed. I know right now it's 4.7 kilometers to our place. It's about 3.5, so that's 25% savings right there, right? And I know, like, it doesn't sound like a lot, possibly 25%, but I do know that all these little bits do matter, right? Okay, so something that we'll put out there as well for you to think about. So that's it for me in my presentation. Thank you. Did you want to add anything?
No, I think excellent job. If you guys have any questions for us, you know.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I will now turn to council and ask, council, do you have any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items directed towards this presentation? Councillor Thompson.
Is your property being assessed as a seasonal, through MPAC, as a seasonal resident?
It's on MPAC, it says, I think it says residential, it says RTEP, so residential taxable, I think educational public, RTEP, on MPAC.
Could you answer?
So, yeah, sorry. So that's the classification for residential, but yeah, it's assessed as a seasonal dwelling.
Thank you.
Can I address that item, or
Go ahead.
may I do that? Yeah,
You were asked the question, so
sure.
please feel free to answer.
Sure, and when we did file the permits, it did say residential seasonal on our permit. And, you know, something that I used to audit, I'm a CPA, I used to audit, and something that I was taught in the very beginning was, you know, substance over form, right? So you have to not just look at what's on paper, but what in substance has happened, okay? So, you know, if you've got on paper that an expense line on your income statement says, you know, business travel, but then when you look at it, it's a 5-star resort that usually hosts weddings, and when you look at the airplane stubs, you know, it says it's all the family members, not employees or clients, right? And you can tell and give an opinion based on the substance of the transaction and what actually happened, right? So it's a different point of view, which is that, yes, it does say residential seasonal on our permits, and as you spoke to, Renee, but it's clearly, if, you know, the plans, it's clearly a 4-season home.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to explain just the category for impact. So
Yes.
impact uses that to they discount the amount of assessment they would assess you at. So it would, I believe it's reduced to 65%. So it's the way they assess it. So they wouldn't assess it as a full residential, even though it is, just because it's seasonal. So the value to it's reduced.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, discussions about the presentation? Councillor Levesque.
First of all, thanks very much for coming in and presenting that information. And I did meet with the Houstons yesterday and showed me their place, and we had some good discussion. I guess some of the things I have and might be directed to Steve or Renee, just for clarification.
Well, could we first start with direction of questions towards the actual presentation?
Well, this is related to that.
Okay, so there's no direct questions to them first?
No.
Okay. Just, I said,
Sorry.
okay. So
Sorry for
I'm just
missing that specific.
Yeah, I'll just see if there's any questions directed towards the presentation first, and then we can go on to follow-ups.
Sure.
Okay. Is there any other questions in regards to the presentation as presented? Thank you. Councillor Tripp.
Thank you. I too had the opportunity to drive out and have a look at the property, and we spoke at length on the phone about the file. So it's 3.5 to your place from the turnoff of
Lower
the
Spruce.
Y.
That's correct, yeah.
Past your, I stopped at your place, turned
Yes.
around and came back out. How long does that road continue from your place?
Well, the road continues probably for, I don't know, God, it goes on forever, right?
Well, in the summertime, it would continue on much
Yeah.
further, but the road stops from a plowing perspective, approximately 1.2, 1.4 kilometers
Past our
past
place.
our place. Yeah.
And is there a residence or a hunt camp or another structure?
Yes, there is. Right at the end, I think it's 927 McHugh is the address. There's a big, I'll call it a house, a big dwelling. Yeah,
And that's just a couple of kilometers down from where you are.
exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions directed towards the presentation? Is there a supplemental or?
Yes, I had one more about the heating. So there's in-floor heat, and it's driven by the propane system, correct? But your mechanics and the pumps and everything are off of solar. You have no power to the facility.
That's correct, yeah.
No power. And I will specify, Rob, that in the garage, it is in-floor heating.
Yes.
Okay. In the barn, it's radiant heating also, but it's on, it looks like electrical baseboards, but it is radiant heating. It's
And
not
off-
in the floor.
Off the same boiler in the main house.
No, we have two different boiler systems.
So then two separate does the propane feed both of those?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
So the propane, and then you use solar to power the pump
That's correct.
to move, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a backup generator in case there's not enough power to the solar system.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions in direction to the presentation? No? Councillor Levesque?
Thank you.
Your questions.
I will actually touch on that last point because they did show me their system. So it's primarily solar in the summertime, but supplemental in the winter with propane,
Exactly.
which is the critical period, which is the difficult part for you guys because propane access for delivery is the problem. That's the
Correct.
main issue. So the solar will not sustain the house in the wintertime because of the lack of sunlight. So
Correct.
just so people are clear on that piece. And when you refer to the barn,
Yes.
that's your main house.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, just for everybody's sake, right?
The barn.
It was a barn.
Yes.
We stay in a
Beautiful.
barn.
It's a beautiful
yes.
home now.
Thank you.
So I guess some questions for Steve. So Jennifer outlined the discrepancy in the cost that was calculated in 2018 versus the cost that's presented now. Can you speak to that now, or is that something you'd have to do in the future?
Your microphone, please. Thank you. We have YouTube people on.
When I looked through the numbers that I had, the old public works manager and my numbers were within $50 of wages. So I think his costs were just wages alone. I added the winter sand as well because we almost use a full load of winter sand on the tandem. So you're looking $200 every load. We have a list of how many times we plow the roads because we keep track for charging other municipalities for doing some of theirs. So we know how many times we're out plowing in the wintertime. So it was just a simple cost of the winter sand. And that's why mine was more than this. But other than that, I don't know what other numbers he had because I have none of his calculations.
Okay, and just for everybody's sake, there was a difference of almost $9,800 difference annually from the 2018 calculations to the current calculation now, which were based on the average of the 4 years. So the one thing, I guess, the one comment, I guess, is I think when we're doing calculations, we should look at the last annual because this bylaw allows us to potentially change it annually. So if you go back over 4 years and try to split the averages, it may not be accurate based on last year's average cost. So just a point of clarification on that. We talked about the length of the road. So I think we're in agreement that it's 3.5 or 3.6 kilometers, correct?
Yes, to their house, and then there's another kilometer past, but the township owns 8.2.
And then, so the question is, beyond the Houston's residence, what is beyond that?
So there's just that other dwelling that they mentioned. So what I took from the driver that plows that area, they used to plow to the Houston's property and turn there, But in 2018, when this all happened the last time, for some reason, he got told to plow, continue in that extra kilometer to the other place. So that's where they started plowing to, and that's where they've
And
kept
that other
maintaining.
place is seasonal as well? Okay. And is it a hunt camp or a?
I don't know, there's never anybody
It's a
there.
hunt camp.
Okay.
One of the other questions I had in looking at alternatives, because we know that cost is a big driver with this whole thing, have we looked at the potential use of subcontractors? So instead of, so having fixed costs versus variable costs for like hour costs, for instance?
No, we haven't done that, but they would still have to do it as a minimum maintenance standards. Like,
Of course.
Yeah, there's still minimum maintenance standards would have to be followed, so I don't know how that would be, you know, just guessing. I don't think that'd be much cheaper, but I'm
Do we
just
do
guessing.
anything like that today anywhere?
No.
It's all done by the township?
No, we used to at one point, and the insurance company got involved, and we had some landowners actually taking care of their own roads, and the township was paying them, and then the insurance company got involved, and they wanted insurance under their coverage, and
Right.
and that all ended.
Okay, thank you. The other question I have is about the, I guess, the road itself, because going down the road, it certainly doesn't look like a township road. And the question is, was it ever a private road?
I honestly don't know if it ever was a private road, but there was a couple of farms back in there years back, and that's probably the reason. We have roads all over the place that we only own the wheel tracks. We don't own 66 feet. So, you know, they've just taken these over because there was farms in there, and, you know, I don't know, I'm guessing 50s, 60s, whenever it started, but not that I know of that it's been a private.
Okay.
Probably half of our roads were logging roads at one time, and settlers just settled on them.
Okay. And in terms of repair and maintenance to the equipment that you use, either be the smaller plow or the larger plow, like what kind of, can you elaborate on what kind of repairs you've done as a result of this particular
A lot of
scenario?
times it's wing arms, like on the side wings. We've went through a few of those, at least probably one a year. But more or less trees, you know, you get the big snowfalls, the ice storms, they're hanging over the road, you know, you're tearing lights off the top, and the biggest thing is you would like to use a half ton on something like that, like our 1 tons, but you can't carry enough sand then to do it, so you're making a couple of trips to go do that same road when the tandem can do it all in one, and, you know, and that's the reason we like using the big truck, because you're not spending as much time again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments, concerns, discussion items? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I just want to know if there's any requirement for the township to move to a year-round maintenance if one of the seasonal residents builds a year-round,
Or changes.
or changes to, upgrades to a full residence.
No, so so if you're on a seasonal road and you choose to build a full year-round residential or transfer over, no, there's no requirement to move to a year-round maintenance.
Thank you. Councillor Tripp?
I'm not sure if it's directed to our CAO or to Steve, but just on the propane, there are a number of places that are on seasonal roads that come up in the wintertime. How do they manage their propane? Because that seems to be one of the big issues I'm hearing is the heat is essential, the propane is essential to keep the place safe and operable.
I don't know of a lot of seasonal residents, what they do for propane. I know of one we have in our Griffith area that actually we plow just off the highway for them to park, and they actually live there all year round, and they four-wheeler in with tracks, and they have propane in there. And I've met Stinsons back in there in the summer months, and they go in and like they have the big submersible tanks, like the huge ones, and they go in and they fill them, and he's good for the full season is what he told me he does. But you know, for other seasonal homes, yeah, I don't know what they use for other than that.
Thank you. Follow-up question or supplemental?
Just supplemental to that, my husband and I are on a kilometer-long hill straight up, and we close our road, our own private road, every season, and we've got one of those bullet things, and we have the propane there, and it's, it's not a township responsibility to keep our road open so we can keep, I'm just saying that if you're a seasonal, in a seasonal place, I can't see that there isn't a way to keep your place heated all year if you plan for it. You can get propane in enough for a whole season.
So the tank that we have is actually a large tank, propane tank. They come out more than once on average per month to refill that tank
In the wintertime.
in the wintertime.
So, and I mean, I suppose, a super, super, super large tank, and filling that might help. It's part of the problem, because the other part of the problem is just access in general, as our insurance company mentioned, that if there is a damage and not having access contributed to that damage, they could choose not to insure us. So it's not just the heat, it's access, right? So, and I would imagine that relates to, like, if there was a fire and they couldn't get in to put the fire out, for example, right? Like, I would imagine it's related to that. So there's kind of two big issues there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Lebec?
I just had one more question regarding plowing. If the Houstons decided, so if the plowing was terminated by the township and they decided to take plowing on their own behalf on a township road, is there liability on ours? Like, can that happen?
It's possible to enter into an official agreement where regarding liability and being able to address it where they could privately maintain the road.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, or discussion items for this delegation? No. I thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Mr. Carrier, we'll just wait for 1 sec just while we shuffle some things around here. Thank you. We'll now move on to section 5.2, delegations, presentations. Renee, would you like to introduce our guest today, please?
Yeah, so we have here today Chris Carrier from Fire Marquee. He'll be presenting their business plan around fire department cost recovery. And following the presentation, we will be moving into, there's a bylaw and agreement that kind of relate to it. So they'll be kind of treated together. We can ask questions from Chris and then move on to the report and recommendation. So I'll...
Thank you. And I'd just like to say, we talk about going to conferences and meeting people and getting new ideas and new perspectives. Chris is somebody I met down in London at AMO and we had a good long discussion about this, and I thought it warranted enough to bring it to council for discussion. And thank you, Chris, for being here today.
It's an absolute pleasure for me, Your Worship, to be here. And just so that your council knows, I did have the privilege of serving the town of Collingwood for 13 years, both as a councillor and mayor from 1998 to 2010. And then in the last term of council, they had somebody who quit in the last year. So I actually did serve a remainder of someone's term for 8.5 months, which was kind of fun to dip my toe back into the municipal world. But I will say that I did tell them I wasn't running again. And my handicap for my golf game went up last year when I went back on council for that period of time. Okay, let's get into the presentation. Can you all of you see this?
Just give us 1 sec. Just bring it up on the screen.
Okay.
Yes, we have it now.
Okay, great. Firemark began its operations on the operational side in 2011. We started with 0 clients. We now have in Ontario a third, actually in excess of a third of Ontario's municipalities as clients. We also have some local service boards. We also have one First Nations community. We've also expanded our business model into British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick. So you do have communities near you that are on our program as well that you can talk to your elected colleagues or through staff and ask about our program from somebody that you may know much better than you know me. The insurance market in Canada has changed dramatically in the 13 years I've been with Firemark. There used to be 234 insurance companies operating within Canada, coast to coast to coast, and now we're down to 193. You can see here the top 20 represent about 84% of the marketplace. Almost all property insurance policies in Canada under the additional coverages section will have something that says fire department service charges. So this is an example where they have up to $25,000 worth of fire department expenses that can be recovered from this particular policy. But there's also a lot of policies that have a smaller amount. This is an example of $1,000 limit. So in this particular case, even if your expenses exceeded $1,000, we can only recover up to $1,000 in the contract. This is important that you, as decision makers, and for me to emphasize to you that what we do on our side of the equation is that we invoice on behalf of your fire service the expenses incurred in response to an insured peril, of which a structure fire is an insured peril. So we are invoicing the insurance company. We are not asking your community member to pay the bill and then go back to their insurance company. No, our team works with the insurance adjuster for the other side. We ask that you do 2 things. One, enter into a contractual agreement with you, which is there for you to review tonight, but also more importantly is to do a standalone cost recovery bylaw. You'll see that this bylaw, if you're not familiar who drafted it, was Ms. Jennifer Savini from Templeman Law in Belleville. And Jennifer is a municipal law specialist, and she is in your part of the province, so you may be familiar with her. And why is the bylaw required? Well, here's an example of Allstate Elite Homeowner wordings. And you'll see here, it says, we will reimburse you up to $5,000 for which you're required to pay. So you can imagine with 193 different insurance companies that the wordings are going to be different depending on the type of policy and which company has written it. But almost all of them have a caveat within their fire department coverage that says local responsibility, local ordinance, a requirement to pay. So if you do not have a bylaw in place that states that you would like to recover these funds from expenses and eligible expenses in response to a structure fire, for example, then you're at the mercy of the insurance company, whether or not they really want to pay you. But this is the key to unlock that coverage so that you do have a guaranteed right to access this coverage requirement. The Insurance Bureau of Canada has been interviewed about these types of bylaws, and they are on public record to tell you that these bylaws are both legal and enforceable. I'm not going to suggest that the IBC likes it because they're the federal trade representatives for the insurance industry in Canada, and they are there to protect the interests of the insurance industry. They're not there to protect the interests of you or our company as well. The process is fairly straightforward. This is something that we would review when your fire chief and their admin assistant are in place. Essentially what we do is we get a copy of the standard incident report form and a scene release form. This is something that they're already likely doing, especially with the standard incident report. The scene release form is a summary. So let's say it's a cover deck of this report. And so we get that. We would then pull up the information because it would identify, let's say, once again, hey, let's say it's cooperators as an example. We would pull up the cooperators information. We would know who the adjuster is in that area. We would reach out to them. Our part of the process for average recovery is about 14 weeks. The shortest recovery has been 8 days. And the longest recovery has been actually 42 months. And that was a non-residential fire. It was an industrial fire in a rural township in southwestern Ontario. So we had to follow that process all the way through near the end of the build out on that one in particular, because of the caveats in that policy. But we were still able to recover $34,000 for our client in southwestern Ontario. So we took hold of that process. And at the end of that long 42 months, our client was quite happy. You receive 70% of the funds that are recovered, and we retain 30% for ourselves. There is no annual and there is no minimum. The only time our company receives compensation is if you receive compensation. And we only recover to the limits of the policy. So the fire service may have incurred $10,000 worth of expenses, but if it's only a $5,000 coverage, then we only recover $5,000, and that's it. The money stays in the fire service budget, three broad categories: public education, personnel training, and capital purchases. And I do get treasurers who do ask me about why does it have to stay? And it's always a good question. But the Supreme Court of Canada in 1998 determined the difference between a fee and a tax. And so they've identified that municipalities have limited taxing powers, but you have broad fee powers. So if a fee migrates into, let's say, general revenues, it could be deemed to be an indirect tax. So we've actually put in our contract that the fire service recovery stay within the fire service budget, and that insulates and protects you from any action by an aggressive insurance company who wants to say, hey, you misappropriated these funds. Gotta love the new Municipal Act. I don't know if any of you served prior before the act was changed in the early 2000s, but to have natural persons powers put in that act was a great breath of fresh air for local governance. We certainly have the expertise on staff, and we're certainly grown up enough to make decisions in our own jurisdiction without the province overlooking our shoulders. The natural persons powers essentially is it the test of reasonableness? So is it reasonable for a local municipality to pass a bylaw to unlock an insurance contract to which you're not a signatory to? However, you are identified as a first party coverage within that policy. The policyholder is not entitled to those funds. Only the fire service is. So if the fire service doesn't receive those funds, then the insurance company keeps it. And the policy is written in such a way that you need to pass local legislation to unlock that coverage. You exceed the test of reasonableness. I do get asked about rates going up. And so this can be a long and complicated discussion. I'm going to try and shorten it as best as I can. I don't want you to feel sorry for the insurance industry. I know that they're on TV after every disaster and they're worried about climate change. So are we. However, in 2022, it does say in their own literature, industry representatives, that they had the highest return on equity since 2003 and 2004. The industry is actually doing better than some of the heartstring stories we might see on TV. In establishing the premium that you pay, this is important because it's very similar to your municipal budget process that you go through. You have so many line items in your budget that are subject to inflation. So you can imagine that the cost of the home and the cost of the contents are under pressure from inflation. Well, let's use cooperators as an example again. In 2015, their insurance coverage for fire services was $5,000. It's $5,000 today, and I'm going to suggest in 2030, it's going to be $5,000. There's no inflationary pressure on that item. You can see by the Insurance Bureau of Canada's statements within the fact book that they've already calculated the cost of covering claims in the premium. So it's much like your budget. You forecasted what you should be paying out. The fact that prior to 2010, they weren't paying out, well, I think that's an issue for them. It's not an issue for us. We did have an insurer in Eastern Ontario raise the concern with their policyholders. Those policyholders reached out to some members of their local council. And I did a presentation at a community center and was able to pull up the financial audited statements of this particular insurance company. They had underwritten $18.8 million. They paid out $10.7 million. They only had $3,000 worth of fire department coverage, which represented 0.028 of 1%. So they had 3 incidents with $1,000 worth of coverage. The annual report from the superintendent of insurance on this particular company showed that they had 26,000 plus direct premiums policies on this, which represented 11 cents a policyholder. There's zero risk that they're going to raise rates on our program because, one, there's no inflationary pressure. They've already forecasted they should be paying out. And when you start looking at the math shows it is such a small percentage, a small portion of the overall payment. And the other quick thing that I'll touch on that is that almost all property insurers in Canada take a portion of their portfolio and they reinsure it. So in this case, we were able to identify within the audited financial statements that a number of the property policies were reinsured. The insurance company had insurance on its own losses and they were reimbursed. There was no loss to this insurance company. There is no deductible, and it will not reduce the payment to the policyholder. Our program is not a tax, and we do understand that through taxation, the fire service is largely funded. However, your constituents have paid for this in their insurance policy. So all we're doing is asking the insurance industry to honor the coverage, which they have a contractual agreement with the policy holders that they've insured. And I'll just go through this next slide. It's always fun dropping off money. As a former elected official, I know the financial pressures that a lot of fire services are under, and it gives us great pleasure to be able to return some of the expenses your fire services incur, because we know that they invest it right back into your community. And that's it in a very quick presentation, Your Worship.
Thank you, Chris, for that presentation. I will now turn it over to council for any questions, comments, concern, discussion items. Councillor Levesque.
Thanks very much, Chris. That was really good, very good comprehensive presentation, and I obviously covered end-to-end. Somewhere in between, I'm not sure, does this only cover structure or or is it property type things, or is it also, like in our case, because it's rural, brush fires, that kind of thing?
Through the mayor to the councillor. So it could, we have recovered on forest fire, but it was on private property. It wasn't on public property. Within your own insurance policy, I'm not sure who you're insured with, but I'm just going to say maybe you were insured with Intact. You're going to find within your own insurance policy for the municipality, you probably have for forest fires, $2 million worth of coverage. But for your own structure fires, you should have $200,000 to $250,000 worth of coverage. So if you had a fire at your arena, the incident that I'm talking about was near Huntsville. We were able to recover. It was actually water bomber drops that were brought in, 2 water bomber drops, I believe, on that incident, and we were able to recover those funds for the fire service and for the municipality. So there are about 13 different insured perils. So we've recovered on a tornado, lightning strikes, small plane crash, small train derailment. So there are a number of insured perils. What we tell our clients is that if it involves a property, send us the file, because there's no cost to you for us to review a file and determine whether or not there's coverage. And if it's not, we just close the file and return it.
Thank you. Just a clarification, because I think it was clear in the beginning and then something else came up, but so whether someone has $10,000 or $1,000, your fee is always going to be 30% of the covered in the policy, correct?
Yes, because early on, like within the last 13 years, there has been some misunderstandings that if it was a $10,000 expense, that we were asking for 30% of the expense. No, right. We only take a percentage of the recovery. Okay, thank you. And I'm not sure where this is directed, but really about communication of this to the township. Are we planning to do that? And if so, because I think the concern would be that people are going to be concerned about affecting policies, right? So if they make a claim against the policy might go up, which you've clarified it doesn't, but those are the kinds of things that people may draw a conclusion.
And are we going to communicate about this program in a positive light also from a marketing standpoint, but also clarification and so on?
Yeah, well, we can include it more in detail and also in our newsletter to explain the direction.
Thank you.
And if I could maybe just expand on that, we also have a trifold folder about our program. We send that to our clients. Often they'll put it in the fire hall. And the other thing is I can also send it in a format to which you can edit, so that if you wanted to put it on your web page, you can also put it on your web page. If you have a cottagers association that might have a concern and want to have a conversation, if it's golf season, I'm happy to come up and provide some input. I'm actually happy to come up anytime. I enjoy, part of the thing that I miss about the municipal world is the communication with people. I quite enjoyed it, and I'm happy to do so if there's those types of concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Thompson.
I'm curious about the access to people's insurance policies. I'm thinking that's a contract between themselves and the insurance company. Does this bylaw, is that what gives you the authority to be able to become an intermediary to get the funds? I'm not sure how that works.
Through the mayor to the councillor, I don't need to see your policy. All I really need is what insurance company that you're dealing with. I have the policy wordings. If it's identified in the paperwork in a large loss incident, it will identify who the insurer is. It will identify the policy number. So that's all I really need to know. We do follow the privacy rules for all the provinces across Canada. And when we're done with the file, I like to call it the Crisco oil solution. We give it all back except for 1 tablespoon. We keep a copy of the check, we keep a copy of the invoice, and we keep a copy of just the basic data of where the incident occurred.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? No? Chris, I'd just like to thank you once again. One of the reasons I brought this forward to our CAO to follow up on was that after our conversation, I had the realization that money was out there and available for municipalities to recoup, and without having the proper mechanism to do it, that money would just sit there and never come to us. And when you explained to me that 30% goes to your company and 70% comes to us, well, that's even though that's 70%, it's 70% that we've never been collecting before. So I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I know that there's conferences where you go to, and sometimes the smaller townships feel like they're treated differently. I wanted to assure you that we have large urban clients, and they get it's a 70-30 split. I have small urban clients, and it's a 70-30 split. And I have a lot of rural clients, and it's a 70-30 split. And I have local service boards in a First Nations community, and it's a 7-30 split. And I also have clients in several other provinces, and it's a 70-30 split. So our fee is the same for everyone, and I just want to emphasize that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
If there's no other questions, you have a great day.
I will stand by and watch their.
Are you going to stay online for this part? Okay, great.
Yes, but I will mute myself.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to section 6.1, bylaw 07-2024, fire department cost recovery, and bylaw 80-2024, fire marquee incorporate agreement. Please read the resolution, because I can't talk anymore.
The council approves bylaw 07-2024 to authorize cost recovery with respect to fire department specific responses, and that council approves bylaw 08-2024 to authorize the entering into an agreement with Firemark Inc. for cost recovery with respect to fire department specific responses.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Tripp, second by Councillor Popke. I believe we don't need any background on this unless CAO has some.
The only thing I'll highlight that Chris didn't specifically speak to for our fire department is that we haven't completed cost recovery here for obviously for structural in this case, and then we do incur the cost, so we could incur up to $15,000 per occurrence. And these expenses are within our wages for the volunteer firefighters and the equipment used. So this offers an opportunity to be able to recover some of these costs. And then further to this is we're exploring other opportunities with MTO cost recovery for road responses also. So we'll continue to bring these things forward.
Thank you. Councillor Tripp.
So thank you again for the presentation and also for the bylaw before us. I understand this is also operating in Arnprior and it's been quite successful. So it's nice to see it transferring to other municipalities as well.
Oh yes, actually, when I was in Arnprior, we implemented it there, and the revenues, I mean, like Chris mentioned, goes back into training equipment. It's beneficial for a department that requires more of this funds.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, discussion items? Nothing. Does anybody need the resolution reread? No? All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you. Moving on to section 7, Planning and Building Department, 7.1 Building Department Permit Report Information Item. I imagine, Chris, you're taking this?
Yes, thank you. This memo was just to update council on all the building and septic permits that have been issued for the whole year of 2023. As you can see by the chart that has been attached, permit numbers are down slightly from the previous year, as are the septic permits. I think though this year the permit numbers were more typical of years in the past, as 2022 saw a significant spike in permit numbers, not just here, I think throughout the whole county. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? There are none seen. Thank you, Chris, for the information. Moving on to section 7.2, bylaw 05-2024, appoint a committee of adjustment. Resolution, please.
That council adopt bylaw 05-2024 being a bylaw to appoint a committee of adjustment for the corporation of the Township of Greater Madawaska for 2024.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second Councillor Popke. Background?
Sure. So yeah, this is just the bylaw that's coming to council. It was discussed in early December at our previous council meeting that we would move forward with the appointment of council being the committee of adjustment for 2024. And essentially staff will bring a report to council again in June with options for 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments, concerns? All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. We now move on to 8.1, bylaw 02-2024, temporary borrowing. Resolution, please.
That council approve bylaw 02-2024 being a bylaw to temporarily borrow money until taxes and other revenues are received up to $1 million. And furthermore, council direct the mayor and treasurer to sign the agreement.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Popke. Background, please. Jennifer?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So this is just an annual bylaw that comes forward every year. It allows the township to temporarily borrow funds. It's kind of like an overdraft protection where the township's waiting on tax monies to come in, tax monies and other revenues to come in. So this is just an annual bylaw that's required.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? Councillor Tripp.
Just a query on the bank rate. Are we paying like a regular street rate, or because of our volume of business, do we get a preferred rate on the line?
I'd have to look into what the rate would be. It would fluctuate. So I imagine when I bring this bylaw forward that they'll have an agreement to sign and at such time we'll have the interest rate.
So it's not like a debenture rate, which is heavily reduced.
It would be lower for us too, and I just want to be clear, so this bylaw is passed, I mean, it's passed by a municipality I've worked in. We, for over probably 10 years, we haven't needed to use it also. So we haven't, so although we're passing it, utilizing it, normally we don't go into the order.
Yeah, thank you. I believe, I'm going to put it in my layman's term, it's kind of like having a parachute on your back, but you don't have to pull it until you need it. So, any other questions, comments, concerns from council? None? All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you. Moving on to 8.2, bylaw 03-2024, interim tax levy resolution, please.
That council approved bylaw 03-2024 being a bylaw to provide for an interim tax levy on all properties and to provide for payment of taxes and penalties and interests of 1.25%.
Thank you. We have a mover. Councillor Tripp, seconder. Councillor Thompson. Background, please.
So this bylaw is an annual bylaw that we bring forward for the interim taxes. And as per the Municipal Act, we charge 50% of the total taxes levied for properties from the previous year. So this bylaw just allows us to move forward until our final tax rates are set.
Thank you. Questions, comments, and concerns, discussion items? None seen. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. 8.3, bylaw 04-2024. Okay, so 2024 operating capital budget and bylaw 06-24 employee remuneration. Resolution, please.
That council approved bylaw 04-2024 being a bylaw to adopt the 2024 operating and capital budget estimates, and furthermore, that council repeal bylaw 13-2023 being a bylaw to provide for the remuneration of employees of the municipality for the year 2023. And furthermore, that council approves bylaw 06-2024 being a bylaw to provide the remuneration of employees of the municipality for the year 2024 as revised in the compensation grid as presented effective January 1st, 2024. And furthermore, that council authorizes the retroactive payment to January 1st, 2024.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Tripp, second. Councillor Levesque. And background, please.
So we've had several meetings regarding the 2024 budget. Since there have been no further concerns brought forward, the budget is presented today by bylaw to be passed.
Thank you.
And to continue with that, hand in hand, the 2024 employee remuneration.
Thank you. Questions, comments, concerns, discussion items by council? There are none seen. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you, Jennifer. We move on to 8.4, marketing strategy update, information item.
This memo is to provide council with an update on the marketing strategy we are completing with Cinnamon Toast, and this is joint with the Township of Whitewater. So some may have been contacted regarding the 4 phases of the process. We completed the discovery phase 1 in November and December, and then currently we're completing the phase 2 of stakeholder engagements. So there's been interviews with council members, with residents, and then there's also, we formed 2 working groups that include businesses, community groups, to be able to provide some information to feed into the marketing strategy. Additionally, we had the community survey out. It's currently open until January 26th. And currently we're, I think, doubling our neighbor with participation at 136 participants to date. So I'm hoping to boost it and get more in there. And then for the next steps, going into February, the Cinnamon Toast Inc. Team will be presenting to staff the outcomes and where the direction they're heading within the plan. And then the expectation is that at the March council meeting, or if required, a special council meeting. We would have Cinnamon Toast come in and present to council the draft marketing strategy. Once approved, they would begin the implementation phase. So there's within the request for proposal and the proposal received from Cinnamon Toast, they are to implement at a minimum one item that is included in the marketing strategy. So once it's approved by council, they'd have about 22 weeks for implementation for that component.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items? Councillor Thompson.
I just want to mention that I've been, and I know a few of us promote these things on Facebook in various forms, and I came across the Whitewater region one and promoted that so that if anyone who visits there, you know, that they also participate in that survey. So that's something we can promote, because the more information we have for both of us, this is a joint venture, then the more information we have and the stronger we are going forward in developing the plan. That's it.
Thank you. CAO?
Just to add to that, just regarding the plan, so as we developed during the discovery phase, the municipalities decided that we would proceed with separate plans also. So when it is presented to council, it will be presented as a Greater Madawaska specific plan, and then Whitewater, we presented their plan. And only just had me thinking of it is because we're so different. That's what we realize is the type of township, what we're, you know, the area, the visitors are a bit different in the both locations, so we decided to move in that way.
Thank you. Any other question? Councillor Beck.
Just to clarify, you said Cinnamon Toast would be coming back to staff only on the first iteration?
That is correct. They're doing, what they do is they go through the process of outlining what we have requested from the RFP. The actual iteration for council to draft review to provide recommendation changes will come at a different date.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, discussion? None. Thank you for that information. We'll move on to 8.5, short-term accommodations update, information item.
The intent of this memo is just to provide council with an update, and also to publicly speak about the initiative around the strategic plan item for reviewing options for short-term accommodation, like regulating short-term accommodations. The survey for that included a bit of questions regarding short-term accommodations, and a draft bylaw was launched in November, and it closed on December 15th. We had a whopping 383 participants, which is great. Some great feedback on ways to, you know, things to consider within the bylaw. So we will be providing a bit of another draft going into these public meetings. So now we have scheduled the public meetings for February 12th and February 13th. I believe 12th is in Griffith and 13 is in Calabogie. So those are posted. And then the intent is to gather all the feedback and come back to council in March with some more details regarding the survey outcomes and the public meetings to provide some direction to staff. And then of course, between that period, if there's anything provided to staff in writing or to council, this will all be considered as part of the package to be brought to council.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussions? Councillor Tripp.
Just one comment. I'm quite pleased to see the community participation. Every time we're doing a monkey survey, we're getting more and more participants, but to have 383 people engage in this, I think is a positive direction that we're heading in. And secondary, I regret I will not be able to be there, as Councillor Levesque will have Ward 1 covered well. I'm going to be on duty travel for those 2 days of the week around those 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, Councillor Popke.
I've been talking to a few people, and there's a lot of interest in going to these public meetings. Is there a limit, or are we limited to the time that we're there? Like, I know it starts at 6 o'clock in the evening, these public meetings. What does it go till? Or like, if there's numerous people wanting to speak, I should say, are we going to allot a certain amount of time for them to allow everybody to get what they want to say at these meetings, or is it gonna be sort of when the time runs out, that's it?
With these meetings, we normally keep them open. You can see the date and the time for 6 p.m. We can, depending on the participation at the meeting, we could provide a maximum, just similar to our delegations here, of 10 minutes to allow, or 5 minutes, depending on the outcome.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, discussions? Oh, Councillor Thompson.
I just want to say that I like that we're doing these meetings in, we'll call it the East End, West End, because it's important to, that it be known that it's a big geographic area with different needs and concerns, and that we want to make sure that all the people know that we really do want to get this right in a way that works for everybody, both the residents, owners, and the people who are renting here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? None. And I would just like to mention that I would like to get as many people out as we possibly can to this public meeting. Whether you are somebody that has short-term accommodations, or whether you're somebody that lives next door to short-term accommodations, you should be there. And also people who have no contact with short-term accommodations, I'd really impress upon you to be there so that you can gain some knowledge about it and what direction you would like us to proceed as well. So I put that out to the township. Please get out to these meetings. Thank you. We're moving on to 9.1, Canada Day Committee. Councillor Tripp, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Very brief. The Canada Day Committee is continuing to meet. We came together a few days ago for our first January meeting. A lot of activity. We're starting to pick up the speed now, as well. July 1st feels like a long way away. It will be on us quickly. Major accomplishments: the band has been booked, same band that we've used for the last few years. The fireworks have been organized and booked. We revisited the budget, and we're still in relatively strong financial position for it. We usually end up with a little bit left over in the bank that comes back into the township coffers. And we expect that to be the same for this year. And then the infrastructure, the things that need to be done up front, the porta potties, the wash stations, so on and so forth. Areas we're looking to improve this year is on the food court. We're reaching out to food vendors to provide a variety of different food sources on site. And that's coming together quite nicely. There'll be a mix of our traditional food, and then possibly a jerk chicken display truck, and a few healthy options out of small places in Renfrew that do that kind of activity. Volunteers, you'll notice a card that I dropped on your desk. One of our issues last year was volunteer engagement. So we did these as a very quick handout that we'll be distributing within our networks to get people thinking about Canada Day in advance. These are really designed to go in the hands of parents with kids and to schools before schools break, to grab kids to bring them in for their volunteer hours. So it's the first step that we're really reaching out to build that workforce for us. And then the final point is we're looking at, one of our Achilles heels last year was the tents and the structures that we have on site. We beg and borrow, and what we're having are residents providing their own personal tents, and sometimes they work well, sometimes they don't. There's an opportunity, a grant through the Trillium Foundation that we've had. We're thinking of putting together the package through the CAO for a grant to purchase tents, not just for Canada Day, but have the logo of Greater Madawaska and sponsored by the Trillium Foundation that can be used throughout the township, a variety of sizes with a number. So if the Recreation Committee has things coming up, these will be available. In wards 1, 2, and 3, they'll be available. So we're putting that package together quickly. The grant application opens up in beginning of February with a month, so we'll get that in quickly, or the staff team will put it together and get it in. But we're pleased with the progress, and I'll just keep updated as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items? Councillor Thompson.
Just that I think that's a great idea. Both the, recruiting, well, people are still well in advance of the event, but also, I love that, you're, right on here, it's got the 3 locations across the township, and we're starting to see some synergies with Canada Day across the township, which is nice, and the tents, I love.
Mayor, I have one last comment on that I forgot to mention. So we received, last year, Councillor Levesque raised the notion of virtual fireworks and drones into the sky. And we've looked at that. We've sent it out to the committee for discussion and review. It's not available this year, so we'll be going with the traditional. But what's interesting, just as background information, is it's not as powerful as the traditional pyrotechnic fireworks and that's really what we're known for, the township. People come here because of the display that we put on, but we don't want to negate the opportunity for innovative in another area. They have drones. They're horribly expensive, so we'd need to find funding for it. Almost twice the price of pyrotechnics. So we would need, but they're not designed primarily for that firework display that we know. It's about telling a story. So in the sky will be pictures. And as we had early discussions with the company, they could do a picture in the sky through lights of the development of the railroad, and Calabogie developing through the log rolling and the woodworking, and then to the ski hill and the racetrack, and then to modern day. So it really is designed more to tell a story than a traditional in the sky celebrate at the end of O Canada. So there's room for that, and I think down the road it's something we should be looking at sourcing money for and sourcing to tell the story, be it Canada Day or Bogie Nights or whatever we have in the community. So it's just, we're not focusing just on Canada Day, we're starting to look at opportunities for telling our story at a different venue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Thank you for that information. We'll move on to 10.1, volunteer firefighter tax credit. Read the resolution, please.
That council support Municipality of Wawa's resolution RC 23265 in support of Bill C310 and amendments to subsections 118.062 and 118.072 of the Income Tax Act, tax credit for volunteer firefighters, and that council directs staff to share a copy of this resolution with the Association of Fire Chiefs of Ontario, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, all Ontario municipalities, and Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke MP.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Levesque to second. Thank you. Background, please. Who is providing the background? Do you want me to read it, or are you going to? The letter, I'll just speak, hopefully you received your package and you were able to read through this, and I'm getting nodding heads from everyone. So the background, it is for people that there's 90,000 volunteer firefighters in communities, and currently the Ontario tax code is giving volunteer firefighters a tax claim credit of $3,000, and this is looking to increase that for them. I believe it's up to $10,000 tax credit, and I think we can all agree that our volunteer firefighters, most of them have other jobs that they walk away from when we are in need, and they lose that income. So I think greatly when I read this, and I know Councillor Thompson, I think everybody on council when they read this was saying, yeah, we need to get behind this and support our firefighters. The fact that they do lose a lot of income, I think their tax credit should change from the $3,000 to $10,000. And I'm not sure when that $3,000 number was put in place, but it was probably numerous years ago, and that's changed. The economy's changed, the world's changed, and I'm a big proponent of endorsing this letter. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items? Do we need the resolution read again? No. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. We now move on to something, it's 10.1. It's an information item, it's from myself. It's about the mayor's chain of office. For those who are not familiar with the mayor's chain of office, you will see different levels of government, and at the municipal level, the mayor's chain of office is something that the mayor would wear for events of high priority, of recognition, and basically it tells a story of a township, of a municipality. It's made up of various emblems, and it takes in consideration the heritage and tradition of the municipality, takes in the civic pride. It creates unifying symbols of our township. It's worn at the official ceremonies, celebration milestones, new leaders. And one of the things that also assists with tourism and outreach as well. The mayor's chain of office is more than just an ornament. It tells a story, and it's something that is missing from this area, that we need to be able to have something that can be worn ceremonial. The establishment of mayor's chain of office for Greater Madawaska is more than investment in the material and representation. It's an investment in our identity, our unity, our future. It embraces the tradition, the honor in the past. We celebrate our present and the shapes tomorrow. It assists the community in coming together as one. It's something that we have to understand too, that in 2026 is our 25th anniversary of becoming a township. And this township has never had a mayor's chain of office, and it's something that can be displayed at the front of the front office. But I would I've asked Renee, I make a motion. I've written it out here. So if you've read this and you've saw the background on it, I don't need to go any further. It's just I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to investigate costing of this and design an implementation strategy and report back to council on it. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke. Second? Pardon me? No, if there's no seconder, it fails. There's no discussion. If there's no seconder?
I'll second it, because there's no harm in investigating. There's no commitment.
No, there's, okay, second by Councillor Levesque. Yeah, and it's just basically to direct staff to investigate what the costing would be, and what if there was a design and implementation strategy of going out to the community, if there's a appetite for it, and people would like to get involved, and if there's an appetite to even do it once we find out after costing and investigation. And if there's not, then it dies, which is just basically, this is an investigation part of it. We can't move forward with anything until we have an idea of is it wanted, and what is the cost behind it? All in favor? Or any further questions?
Discussion?
Sure, yeah.
The investigation will take staff time, and what the chain of office, from what I understand, is first of all 14th century invention that has continued, but it's a marketing tool, and we're right now dedicating staff time to working out marketing for the township. If somewhere in the survey a chain of office is high on that list, then I think that could be included. But I really don't think it's a good use of staff time at this point, especially considering a general, we've come in with transparency, we'll listen to you. Anything that draws attention to us as a council rather than to the community, I think would be bad timing.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Tripp?
Thank you. First, I like the idea of the chain of office. And I think it has merit. I'm just questioning the timing, and similar to what my colleague just said, it's been a really busy year. We're getting a certain element of community engagement. We're working cohesively together. It's early on, I think, to bring this forward in case there's a different perception from the community that we're anointing with the chain. That's not the intent of the chain. I just wonder about the timing. I do think it's essential to have it by 2026. Not essential. I think it would be beneficial coming into our anniversary to have it. And that also is something that we're building as a council for the next council coming in, as opposed to for ourselves. So the timing is the issue. I like the idea. But that said, as Councillor Levesque said, there's no cost other than a bit of staff time to scope it out. I have no idea what they cost. I mean, if it's a big ticket item, I'd rather see that money go into programming and do this at the end of our term. But it's not a quick and easy decision for me.
Thank you. Councillor Levesque?
So seemingly the crux of the matter is, as you indicated, Councillor Tripp, timing is the issue, and for you, it's just general, whether we should or not, period. I'm a little on the fence, but back to the point you made about staff time, I just wonder how we can limit that somehow, but I don't, because when you hear about marketing strategy and applying design and all those things, it's going to require like somebody to investigate that, but also you're going to have to go out to possibly multiple companies and collect that information and all the rest of it. So I have no idea what that looks like, whether that's 20 hours or 10 or 50. And I don't know if we can get a gauge on, you know, if we're 10 hours into it and it still looks like we've got 30 hours to go, like can we get a report back to indicate where that's at, like some sort of, I don't know.
Councillor Thompson's next.
I think before we can work on the icons that go into a chain of office, which takes a lot of concentrated effort, we should complete our marketing in general, and that will give us an idea of what we could even consider. But to ask staff to look into one marketing tool before we have an overall marketing strategy, I think would be a waste of time. Once we have it, then as you know, as Rob said, we could consider doing it, but I don't think, I mean, I did look into it briefly and they're very expensive, and the most expensive part isn't the actual thing, it's the time it takes to develop what you're going to put into it. So at this point, I think staff time is better to concentrate on the marketing strategy we're working on, and down the road, if it turns out that this is something we want to do and we have the funds to do it, then, but right now, I don't think I would endorse even getting staff to look into the costs.
Okay. Councillor Tripp? Apparently you've been talking too much.
Thank you. So I haven't spent a lot of time on it, but when I did look at the chain of office, it is an interesting it is an interesting thing for us to have, because it does tell our story, and each of the medallions that go around are different vignettes that pull us together as a community. So to even scope out the message that we want to talk, I mean, it hasn't been in our history. We're going back to day one in order to capture the story on the chain to present day, and then giving opportunity for future growth. It's a big project. And we're just now coming out of the strat planning process. We've come through a really strong budget that we need to implement. We are now starting to get our legs under us as a new council coming into the second year of our term. And it's going to be a busy year with the marketing, the new committee structure starting, all of the activities we're looking at. I'm really worried about the time at this moment. I do think it's an important initiative. I just come back to, is it best to move it out a year and have it ready for 2026 as a celebratory for here's our anniversary and here's the mayor's chain of office that ties into that.
Thank you. Councillor Popke, you're going to need to steal your mic back, I think.
So I just want to say, like, around here in our township, people notice things. And our council, I think, is pretty involved within the community, and they're grateful for that. But they do notice things like wearing gold chains and things like this, even though it is ceremonial per se. What if we, and like, to reduce the cost greatly on something like that, why don't we have like a friendly competition within the community? People design something on their own, bring it to the council, and it engages the community a little bit, and they have more say into this ceremonial mayor, whatever you call it there. Just something to think about anyways.
Yep, thank you. And I think that's part of the implementation, design and implementation strategy would be looking at something, the community involvement. But any other questions, comments, concerns? No, okay. Oh, Councillor Beck.
I'd like to hear from the CAO on that topic of staff usage and ability to meet demand.
It would depend on how far we go with this. Staffing, I mean, at this point, we're recruiting for the community development coordinator. This position would probably spend more time in navigating this piece. The focus has been on the marketing strategy. Is going to be the strategy is going to include one implementation through the consultant, but a lot of items will be brought up as implementation for the staff to do in-house. So there will be a focus in that way. And I don't know, speaking to this contribution piece, coming from the marketing strategy, we can pull from it and it may assist in developing. But yes, currently, I mean, we have some items we're sorting from the strategic plan to a developer work plan. So whatever council wishes, we will work within our work plan.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns at this time? Okay. Need me to read the motion again? Or we?
I think it would help just to make sure we know what it is we're agreeing or not agreeing to.
Okay, so the motion was to direct staff to investigate costing and investigate design implementation strategy and report back to council. All in favor? Oh, Councillor Beck has a question.
Sorry, more of a statement. That sounded different than what you outlined, which seemed to me like it was going to be part of the marketing strategy or not.
Yeah, just to clarify, this was the motion that was put on the table.
Right.
So I reread the motion.
Right.
Not what Renee had said afterwards in the discussion.
So the question is, does the motion need to shift as a result of that? Because what I heard, and I correct me if I'm wrong, what I heard was we have a marketing strategy campaign underway currently, and this could be part of that or come from that.
The question is, so council would make the decision on it if you want to add a timing around it. I think it would be more timing around when would council expect this to come forward.
So if we're going to amend the motion, Councillor Popke moved the motion, you seconded it. If we're going to change the motion, you'd both have to be in agreement to change the motion or vote on it as it is. So if you're both in agreement to change the motion or reword it, then we can do that. Okay. So Councillor Popke and Councillor Lebec, would you like to reword them? Oh.
I have one comment, just follow up to Jeff's comment about the process. So with the marketing strategy coming out, it's pretty hard to cost something until we know what it is we're going to build. We don't know what we're going to build on this chain until we link that into the marketing. So are we premature still on looking at costing until we actually know what it is we're going to be looking to design? And how does that flow into our marketing? Otherwise, we're going to cost something in one stream, while in the other stream we're moving forward with marketing. We want those two connected. So I'm questioning whether or not this should follow the marketing, get the marketing strategy up and come back once this fits in to the marketing plan and we have a sense of what we want on the chain, and then cost it, and then make the decision to go forward or it's not economically feasible.
Councillor Thompson.
Related to costing, I'm sure that's the reason I couldn't find a cost online. Because there's so many variables. It's like, how much is a bridge? There are so many variables. What's it, you know, it would be really a big task to ask staff to come up with costing on something we've given no parameters for as well. Even the companies they would contact wouldn't be able to give them costs without that information. So I don't know about amending the bylaw, the motion, of how that is done, but I would suggest that we ask staff to just keep this consideration, put this consideration in marketing plans, just to fold it into what we're already doing with marketing and have it as a consideration for later.
So if we'd like to, as I say, if we'd like to amend the motion that's on the table, and we have Councillor Levesque and Councillor Popke agreeable to do that, that would be the first step we need to do, and then reword a motion. Or we can vote on it as the way it is.
The way it is currently would fit within the work you're doing around the marketing strategy, yes?
That's correct. There's no timeline associated with the current motion.
So that's what I would recommend. Just go ahead as it is.
Yeah, okay.
With the implied notion that it would fit within the current work that's underway.
And that falls under the implementation strategy part of it. Okay. Need to read the motion as it is right now, or is everybody good on it? Good. Okay, so I'll ask first, all in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. We will now, 11.1, enter into closed session. Resolution?
That the council meeting of January 18th, 2024 enter into closed session at 4:37 p.m. pursuant to section 2932 of the Municipal Act regarding 1, a litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, specifically a causeway easement.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Tripp, second. Councillor Thompson. All in favor to move into close? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you. Now we're moving on to 12.1, move to open resolution 11-24.
That the council meeting of January 18th, 2024 move back into open session at 5:09 PM.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second. Councillor Thompson. All in favor to move into open? That is unanimous, so carried. We are in open. 13.1, rise and report, resolution 12-24.
That council reports the following as a result of the closed meeting item: litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, specifically a causeway easement, proceed as directed and closed.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, Councillor Tripp to second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried 4-1. Thank you. Move on to section 14, bylaw 14.1, bylaw approval, resolution 13-24.
Be it resolved that the following bylaws, 02-2024 temporary borrowing, 03-2024 interim tax levy, 04-2024 2024 operating and capital budget, 05-2024 appoint a committee of adjustment, 06-2024 2024 employee remuneration, 07-2024 fire department cost recovery, 08-2024 Fire Mark Inc. agreement be deemed read a second and final time and passed by council, and furthermore that 09-2024 confirmatory be deemed read a first, second, and final time and passed by council at the regular council meeting held January 18th, 2024.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, Councillor Thompson for second. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Moving on to Councillor Thompson's favorite part, 15.1, motion to adjourn. Please read the resolution 14-24.
That the regular council meeting of January 18th, 2024 be adjourned at 5:11 PM.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson. Seconder. Councillor Popke. All in favor to adjourn. That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you.